In studio with me today, we have Batman.
Hello, Luke. It's good to be in the show today. I'm excited about this. But I've heard Marcus Pittman thinks I'm a villain.
Speaking of villains, we also have Bane.
Yes. Theatricality and deception seems to be very powerful agents for opponents of the enemy as of lately. Just kidding.
And Joker Malone.
I'm the Joker now, Joker Malone.
You do a good Joker, dude, like old school Joker.
Only when I'm rapping. I can't really do it in normal life.
Like, why so serious?
He does a good old school Joker, though, like from the TV show.
Like the one with Adam West?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to have him freestyle for us later. It's good stuff. And then Skyping with us is Marcus Pinkman.
What's up, Luke?
What's up, dude?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, man. I'm not good, but I'm here. I'm not going to do much talking today. I'm going to do a lot of facilitating because my voice isn't so hot.
Vocab should lay hands on you and heal you, and then we can get on with this thing.
He's got some Pentecostal background, man. I bet he could do some of that.
True that.
Still in, just a little bit. Just need a little bit.
We are not videoing this show today only because if you saw the debate recently that Marcus did, which was really amazing, we got some haters that just said they saw too much of Vocab's face. So we decided not to video this because we didn't want to upset anybody.
It's true. Don't want my
offensive
hair.
fro.
Yes, that was very distracting during the debate.
Kudos to you, Vocab, though. I thought you did an amazing job. Probably the best moderating job I've ever seen.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
Marcus, would you concur?
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, see? We're trying to make debates relevant. They don't need to be like from 1975 and sound like they're underwater.
true.
That's exactly right.
No, seriously, though, the cameras are with Jeff on the way to Florida. That's why we're not. I don't mind seeing your face. I like seeing your hair. Marcus told you earlier he misses your hair.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate both of those comments.
Yeah, for sure. So, today we're going to talk about, like I said, superheroes, the gospel from a Christian worldview. I'm excited. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. Vocab's done, what, you done 3 shows on similar... You did one on Superman, one Batman, and one...
Pop culture.
Pop culture, yeah.
Apologetics.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So those were cool. So I've been excited to do it. Marcus, we've been talking about maybe doing this for a little while, too. So I thought this would be a good opportunity. So were you going to say something,
Glad to be here to talk about how terrible superheroes are.
Eventually.
I want to start with Batman because Batman's my favorite. And I think that's Jerry's favorite, and it's my daughter's favorite. And I'm all about Batman. And Marcus is going to tell me why I should not be all about Batman. Isn't that right?
No, Batman's okay.
Okay. So let's just start, dude. Tell me your thesis here.
Okay. The Bible very strongly condemns vigilantism. Like, really strongly is against it. And so my position is that superheroes take justice into their own hands, are in sin, and need to repent, or they will go to hell.
That's a strong thesis.
Okay. Well, that's just what I believe.
So break that down.
Okay, so the Bible has placed rulers in authority in Romans 13 to govern those who do evil, to terrorize those who do evil. Superman is not a government official. He is a reporter. and Batman, I think a case could be made for Batman that he's commissioned by the commissioner. So Commissioner Gordon actually sends him out. So I think yes. Okay. So I'll let Batman slide. But most every other one's not so much. I think there are some though, like isn't Iron Man hired by the government? No,
all the Avengers are by S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So they're okay. So, but that's just, you got to be very clear though. The government has to send them out. If the government is like trying to kill the superheroes, they're kind of in. That's not good.
Well, Iron Man wasn't all. I'm just thinking. There's this opening scene in Iron Man 2 where he's before the Senate Council. Do you remember that? And they're telling him he needs to turn over the suit, and he's basically, no, I'm not doing that.
Mm.
Right. Regulation.
That, yeah.
Is S.H.I.E.L.D. actually, they're actually a government agency, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's like the FBI and the CIA
Yeah.
on steroids or something.
Yeah. What about, I'm getting off topic with Batman here a little bit, but what about Captain America? Because I know, Marcus, that you love the Captain America
Yeah, he's
movie.
a soldier with the military, so I would think he would be acceptable too.
Uh-huh.
But Superman, still terrible.
So really, now that we've broke it down, Superman's the only superhero that you have an issue with.
Yeah, he's actually like the worst kind of superhero too, because like he's not even from this planet, so he's like imposing his morality.
What about Thor?
His alien morality.
Well, Thor is sanctioned by the government too, I guess.
Well, Thor is a false god, and he will be destroyed. So.
Yeah, well, what does Captain America say? There's only one God, ma'am. He doesn't look like that.
No, right, exactly.
From the Avengers.
So there we go.
Well, we're going to talk more
my
about
position on superheroes.
We're going to talk more about Superman later because how he's a figure, a Christ figure. We'll talk about that, and then I'll see if it'll change your mind a little bit.
Okay, sounds good.
So you don't have anything? Is that all? That's you're done? That's your whole?
No, I have some Bible verses too. I'll pull
Yeah,
them
let's
up.
do it. Work on it. Bring it.
All right,
Preach.
Y'all go ahead.
Oh, you're not ready for those?
No,
Well, I could say, let me say one
okay.
thing about Superman. So in the Man of Steel movie, for example, he works to not display his power because, Pops is like, yo, man, that's going to get everybody in trouble. Just chill with it. But he would only utilize it when somebody's about to die and he needs to. So he's saving a school bus of children or saving guys out on an oil rig. So he's not catching bad guys.
That's true.
He has something within his ability to do, and I actually think it would be immoral for him to not exercise it on the behalf of others in the situation where he knows that he can utilize it. Often, he does it, at least specifically in Man of Steel movie, at expense to himself, because once he does it, he has to leave because they're like, yo, what's up? I know what I saw with this guy. He's like walking through fire, yada, yada. So he has to go get another job, this type of thing. And then once he sort of does come out to an extent as the Superman or whatever, in Man of Steel, he willingly gives himself up to the United States government. So he gets handcuffed.
Yeah.
He walks in. He lets them interrogate him. All that, and they're like, Lois Lane is like, you let them handcuff you? And he's like, well, basically, it wouldn't seem like much of a surrender if I didn't, and he's sitting there. So he actually willingly lays down his power on the behalf of others for their security. But then at the end, they realize this man is not our enemy. Once they see Zod and his crew trying to squash, then they're like, yo, Superman, help us out, man. You're the only one who can do it. So I don't see Superman quite in the same way as doing that. I think Batman is more the one that you can make a case because, Gordon, but everybody else ain't agreeing with Gordon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he actually takes a different type of measure. He runs his almost own pseudo-police organization on the side. Superman doesn't, generally speaking, seem to do that.
So is it okay for Superman to raid an abortion clinic?
Is it okay for him to raid? What's a raid?
Well, like to stop an abortion clinic, to like go into an abortion clinic and like use his laser eyes and just like set the place on fire.
Is it okay for Superman to raid an abortion clinic?
Huh? Yeah.
I don't know. I think
just saving the lives is what's the difference between that analogy and like children on a bus?
So I don't know. I would see some kind of differences because that's where I would say there are some questions about who has authority to do what when you talk about that type of thing in relationship to an abortion clinic. But if someone, you're in a situation and somebody is at that moment going to die, you're right there present with them. It's almost like those Good Samaritan laws, even at the very least. It's like how is Superman not supposed to help them? He was on the bus, in the movie specifically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my Bible verse.
Go
okay?
ahead. Yeah.
All right. So, and he answered, I'm the son of Sojourner and Amalekite. David said to him, how is it you are not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? This is David talking to the guy who claimed to kill Saul. And then David called one of the young men and said, go execute him. And he struck him down so that he died. And David said to him, your blood be on your head, for your own mouth was testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. So there's like David's reaction to vigilantism, to assassination, essentially, was his death. So God doesn't like people to take justice into their own hands. So I can see what you're saying about about Batman, though. I can see. So you're saying like Superman is just saving people who are in trouble, a la like the verse in Deuteronomy that says if somebody comes into your house, you have a right to kill them.
All right, Marcus, hold that. We're going to the break here. We'll pick that back up on the next segment. So we're talking about all things superheroes, super transforming gospel.
Or evil vigilante.
Or evil vigilantes. So let's pick up, Marcus, where you left off.
Okay, so I was talking about, so here's a story. The story is that the guy kills Saul. Saul is dead. And so the response from David, who several times spared Saul's life, the response to David when this guy claims to have killed Saul is he issued his execution for taking justice into his own hands. He actually says, how is it you are not afraid to put your hand out to destroy the Lord's anointed? And he's saying that you don't have the authority. You're not anointed. You don't have the authority to take this into your own hands. And so the response was capital punishment for him, and he died. So when we talk about superheroes, we have to ask ourselves, are they commissioned by the government to do this? And there are cases where they are, like Captain America, the Avengers being hired by S.H.I.E.L.D. So all that stuff, those are valid cases. But then you have Superman, who does things against the government too. So like I brought up the abortion issue. So is it okay for Superman to use his laser eyes to burn down an abortion clinic because he's saving the lives of children? And I could point to an example where he did something where he did something against the government in Superman 4, which is a terrible plot, very horrible, worst Superman movie ever made. And he takes the nuclear bombs and he all over the world and he throws them into the sun. He acted against the governments of the earth, and he acted as a vigilante there to save the lives of people.
Yeah, I think you bring up some good points. I mean, we were talking about this during the break. If you look at Superman, like especially not including Superman 4, it seems like whenever he was rescuing people, he'd go up to space or whatever, and then he'd like hear someone in trouble and he'd go and help them. The only time he really ever seemed like he was like fighting bad guys is when they came after him. But until Superman 4.
Did you just erase Superman 4 from the canon?
I think most Superman fans
from the canon
would actually agree with
Is that like we do with Star Wars 1 through 3?
Some Star Wars fans would agree with that too, but
dude, Vocab's got a Cobra Commander shirt on, Star Wars jacket, and Batman underpants.
And I'm holding a Superman book. It's true. Well, it's interesting though. So, like when we talk about vigilantism and all this, and Superman, Batman specifically, I mean, first of all, don't forget, like Spider-Man, they're trying to apprehend him as well, oftentimes they are. But with Batman, the reason why, looking at it from a different angle, he resonates with us as some sort of a hero is because we are recognizing that there's some kind of transcendent morality that a government may not always employ or do. The interesting thing, though, is it's not as if often the laws or whatever of Gotham are just. They seem to be like ours, but the way they're enforced is not just, because the judges are corrupt, the cops are corrupt, because of the corruption within the system. Then Batman is simply enforcing what we know often to be aspects of the right thing by sort of employing the transcendent morality that we know exists. So I think that's why it resonates with us, because if we viewed him strictly as revenge, it'd be in a different light, like more along the lines of the Punisher, who's sort of an anti-hero. He's really strictly going on revenge, and he's killing people. Or Green Arrow at certain points along his mythos, he is about killing people.
I think Green Arrow is the worst. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The interesting thing is, these guys, like, for example, Green Arrow, he still has murdered people, but he's never brought to account He's never brought to justice. Even if he mends his ways later on, it's like, dude, you still murdered a bunch of people when you didn't have authority to do so.
And like the show The Flash too, like they're putting everybody that they capture in this private prison.
Yeah, what
and I'm like, what in the world? Like they're like, this is kidnapping.
Yeah, if people have a problem with Guantanamo Bay, just look at what's going on there in that lab, man. It's pretty crazy.
But it's worse than that. It's like a private lab. It's not even a government-owned thing. It's just like the guy's like own private little hamster cages.
Yeah, I've wondered about that. I'm like, dude, that doesn't seem right on a number of levels.
Marcus, is that the Flash show on WB you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to check that out.
So Marcus, let me ask you this. Is it okay for Christians to watch and enjoy vigilante shows?
I think we can enjoy the good things that adhere to God's worldview, and we can pick out the bad.
Good answer. Now, what about this? What about atheists who watch these shows and like them? They can't account.
Atheists like them because they're image bearers of God.
Right. But I'm saying they can't account for the transcendent good and evil.
Yeah, I don't think they can.
They just don't.
There's a classic problem in philosophy called the Reformer's Dilemma. And what it is if you make your system of morals in some way directly related to what's legal and what's illegal, so sort of a general consensus that gets ratified or codified. And a lot of atheists essentially do things like that when they talk about right and wrong. Yeah. It ends up more about legal and illegal and general consensus and majority, minority, all that kind of stuff. Well, they have the problem of then how could it ever be moral for a person to reform that, to say, no, guys, this law is unjust, we should do this law instead, because that shows there's something other than the written law that is in the books for some city or whatever that the reformer would be appealing to. But the question is, where's that? What is it that they're appealing to? We would say, of course, this is ultimately the morality that you mentioned, Marcus, that's written upon the hearts of all men and women, that's rooted in God's character. But we would say to the atheist, where is that? Where's that from? And of course, ultimately, there is no answer because they have no source within a materialistic framework.
Yes. Well said.
Amen.
I second that. We're coming back close to another break here. So we come back. we're gonna take a little break from the discussion. We're gonna read some comments, maybe by a villain, if he's ready.
Maybe.
So yeah, this is a fun show, man. I'm enjoying this. It's a cool topic, and I think it's important to be able to view stuff like this, entertainment specifically, from a Christian worldview. So when we come back, like I said, we'll read some comments. You're listening to Apologia Radio. Welcome back to Apologia Radio. That was Bane from Batman. And actually, Bane just popped in the studio with us, and he's going to read a comment for us from Rebecca Albano, which she actually won lunch with all the speakers at the conference. What just happened, Bane? Did you lose it? Go. Sorry.
Victory has defeated you.
What just happened? Oh, you're doing that one. I'm sorry. You're not doing Rebecca Albano, Bane. You're doing Ill Magic Matt. My bad.
Hey, did you guys know Bane is a drug addict? So they were in the prison, and he was born there, and they were doing this experiment to like make dudes like crazy strong, but it was killing everybody they were experimenting on, right? So they got Bane in the prison, and they give him this serum that's called Venom. He's able to handle it. He's strong enough to handle it. But then because of he's all hulked up now, he was able to break out. But he's addicted to this stuff, this venom. Uh-huh. And so part of what's supposed to happen with his mask is he's getting venom constantly.
Oh.
So his greatest strength is due to an addiction he has that could kill him if taken away. So he's interesting to talk about, like discussions of addiction and power and those types of things, because that's Bane's backstory.
Yeah, they don't show that in the movie.
No, they don't. But that's like the part of the comic aspect of it.
Okay.
Is, that's
I didn't know that.
From, yeah.
All right, Bane, what you got?
That's true. I'm competing in the CrossFit Games soon, too.
Thank you, Bane. That was awesome.
You're welcome. I'm Apologia Radio's destiny. I'm tired. We're up early.
How was traffic today, Bane?
It's horrible.
Okay, thank you. Marcus, question for you. How do you think, okay, speaking of Bane, so in Batman, he basically, blows up the stadium and like holds everybody hostage. So what would be an appropriate Christian response to something like that? Is it okay for someone like Batman at that point to try to defend the innocent and defeat evil? Because it's not the government that's doing it. It's, an outside force even overtaking the government. So what would be an appropriate Christian response to that?
Well, I think I don't exactly know all the ins and outs of biblical law, but I believe that if if somebody goes to war with our country and like they're invading our territory and our homes, like I think we have a right for everybody to chip in and to protect ourselves, right? So I think in that instance, I don't necessarily agree that we need a police force. We should have, the citizens should be the main police force. That's why they have a right to bear arms and all that stuff too. So there is some leeway for self-protection. That doesn't when I say that, I'm not allowing vigilantism. So there's a difference. So in that instance that you brought up, for sure that, if all these people were in danger, like everybody should be able to, to be able to run to the rescue, not just the police who, so I guess that's what I.
Okay. That's good. I like your answer. We're going to get down the break here. We'll pick this back up on the other side.
My calling is to fight against injustice. I am the hero Gotham deserves, but not the hero that it needs. But I have a rapper that Gotham does deserve. Here is Vocab Malone.
On the radio, it's called Apologia. Boom, bap, pow, hit him with the onomatopoeia. That's when words sound like sounds. My name is Batman. I'll beat you down. Beat you down with a frown, go ahead, I fight the clown, his name is Joker, provoke ya, I got the bat smoker, I got the bat copter, watching the opera as Bruce Wayne, y'all know my name, in the background, that crazy dude, his name is Bane, check it out
Bane.
now,
I come and bring the pain,
like the house, we bring it out, check it out, I'm Batman, most deaf, no doubt, I be chilling in the manor, I got the man-earth, peep it out now, I'm not like Bruce Banner, I'm all natural, not supernatural. My name is Batman, got the pointy ears with a cow, that's COLW. I need a show in CW, but it's on Fox. Hey yo, I gotta stop. What?
Well, can't you see? I'm Ra's al Ghul. Destiny. Turn down for what?
Whatever. We don't know what's happening, but that's freestyling right there.
That was awesome. Dude, that was great. We had some tag team back again, Rex and Effects, and let's begin.
Backup vocals. Bane train's coming.
The Bane train's coming.
I don't even remember what we were talking about now. What were we talking about? Marcus, you were saying something.
We had some breaking superhero news.
Oh, yes. Yes. What is it?
They just released a photo of Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor for the new Batman vs. Superman movie.
Did he shave his head?
He did shave his head.
That's awesome.
It looks really grimacing.
Yeah, I'm excited. It would be interesting from a Christian worldview. How do we break down Batman versus Superman? Who's good and who's bad?
I don't know.
Interesting.
Depends what they do with it, yo.
Yeah, I know.
But I do have an interesting...
Two vigilantes are fighting. Which one is right?
I have an interesting quote from a Batman comic where he says something. It's in a DC Comics saga called Hush. And here's what he says. Deep down, Clark's essentially a good person. And deep down, I'm not. Now, I mean, that's interesting because I don't actually would think we don't agree with Batman's assessment of Clark. Meaning, Clark may not be a human, or at least he's not a citizen of Earth.
He technically could be free of the line of Adam.
I guess that's hypothetically
not part of the line of Adam.
I guess that's hypothetically true, but then the question is, how on Krypton is there sin? Because there's clearly deviation from God's moral law.
Yeah.
So if you have that, then how is it that it's interesting what he says?
I can
though.
Answer that question.
I do like this line though.
No,
and deep down, I'm not.
Question.
Batman affirms the total depravity of his own soul. There, I would say.
Yeah, the reason that Superman there is sin on Krypton is because one day a long time ago, Doctor Who came and picked up some passengers for the TARDIS and brought them to Krypton, and then humans infected Krypton.
All right. Well, thank you for
that. How you make that connection?
Sure. All right.
There you go.
Well, hey, I mean, are we able to play a clip from Krypton?
Sure.
Because I'd be curious, while we're talking about Superman and the morality of Krypton, there's this discussion that Jor-El and Zod have in the Man of Steel movie, and it sort of has to do with eugenics, because they talk about bloodline. So to me, there's all types of things to touch on just from this one clip, such as if there was a such thing, what would evolutionary morality look like, abortion, all types of things in this one little clip, image of God talk, all that. And even just real quick, it's interesting, Superman's house is called the House of El. Yeah. Anyone, that sounds very Hebrew-like for House of God.
Yeah.
He's Kal-El. His dad is Jor-El.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff there. But do you have that clip?
Yeah, I got the clip, and we'll definitely talk more about that. I got a whole bunch of stuff. But, here's that clip.
So this is from the Man of Steel movie towards the beginning of the movie.
Oh, and this is a commercial for Skechers.
Golf tips.
This guy.
When they say Jor-El, is that short for Elohim? Since they're...
That's what a lot of people...
That's what they're going for?
That's what a lot of people say, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Zod? This is madness.
What I should have done years ago. These lawmakers, with their endless debates, have led Krypton to ruin.
And if your forces prevail, you'll be the leader of nothing.
Then join me. Help me save our race. We'll start anew. We'll sever the degenerative bloodlines that led us to this state.
And who will decide which bloodline survives, Zod? You?
Don't do this, El. The last thing I want is for us to be enemies.
You have abandoned the principles that bound us together. You've taken up the sword against your own people. I will honor the man you once were, Zod. Not this monster you've become.
He says these lawmakers with their endless debates. So Jor-El has an impatience with some form of some democratic process, it seems, first of all. So there's that. And then he talks about, let's rebuild our race, our people, casting away the degenerative bloodlines that have kind of infiltrated. That's interesting. And then Jor-El applies to some kind of other larger morality. He's like, you've abandoned the principles that have once bound us together. And so he's appealing to something else there. And all that's interesting later on, because in the Man of Steel movie, for example, what they want to do is change Earth to make it habitable for sort of a new Krypton, since Krypton's destroyed. And so Zod is an interesting villain because he's not just out to kill and conquer. He has a love for his people. And so he deems them as more important, like a stronger tie with them than the people of Earth. And really, ultimately, seems even more worthy or deserving of life. So terraforming Earth, meaning it'll be uninhabitable for the humans. Terraform is, they're changing the very structure of it. And then they inhabit it. So it's actually, that's his larger reason and purpose. And there's questions there that are interesting, like, if evolution was true, for example, what would be wrong with what Zod is saying?
Yeah.
I would say it seems like it would actually make sense within that kind of framework. Jor-El is appealing to some other principles that bound them together before. And there's a lot of interesting stuff just in that clip. What do you think, Marcus?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, is that how you guys got?
I think it's great. It ties into what you were saying earlier about when we were talking about atheists, and basically right and wrong is determined by who, the majority, basically, what the laws are. And that's kind of what Jor-El's getting at here, is who's going to determine what's right and wrong.
Yeah. Are Kryptonians image bearers? That's the question.
Well, I mean, if it seemed like we'd say...
if tomorrow an alien race invaded the planet, would they be considered image bearers?
If they're... if they're created by God and they're able to do something like invade the planet, I would say the answer would be yes.
No, that's a good question.
That's a really good question.
It is a really good question.
Well,
I don't know.
It appears
they could be really smart animals.
So if that's the case, that would be something different. Like if somehow they're like really intelligent, or some kind of bears with time travel abilities and super instincts, and they're kind of like animals, then that would be different. But just from what we know about the Kryptonians, I would say we would say yes. For example, especially the fact that they're having a discussion about morality, principles that bind us together, I'm going to have to say yes, because I don't view... That's what's called second-order thinking. So second-order thinking is not just thinking, because there's an extent to which certain animals, we would say they can think. For example, I'm hungry. I know I need to eat. But it seems to stop there as far as what we could gather.
Animals don't appeal to principles that bind us together.
Right, that's thinking about thinking. So that's second order thinking. It's essentially a higher order of thinking. That is something that only those who have the imago Dei are able to do. What philosophers call second order thinking.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, I was just thinking, you look at like Green Lantern, like some of those guys, they're basically talking animals. You know what I mean? And so like, would they fall into that category as imago Dei, or
which guys? So anatomically, they can look a certain way, but that's a different question than what they are sort of existentially, ontologically down, like at the soul level, mind, consciousness. And if they're speaking and based upon the things they're saying, so it's not a grunt, it has deeper meaning, language, which is symbols, which are pointing to thoughts, then they would still in some way be in the image of God. Because anatomically, that's not even our most important feature. Because God himself, the triune God, pre-incarnation, there's no physical form, and so being made in the image of God doesn't rest upon our anatomy. Now, God structured us that way to be able to imitate. For example, he's active in the world. He gave us hands to be able to move and be active and do things in the world. But the hands are instrumental. It's not the essential aspect of the image of God, I would say.
That was awesome, dude.
Pass the offering plate, vocab, so I can tithe, brother.
Super.
I feel like I'm in church.
That was good, man.
Super, man.
That was good. No, I enjoyed that.
Well, there's another clip I don't know if we could play for Superman that really is great on this. I don't know. It relates to some of this discussion when they're fighting. Him and the gal. I think her name's...
Yes, Farora.
Yeah, and I researched a little bit before we did the show.
Which Superman?
This is Man of Steel, so the most recent one, which I think is hands down the best Superman movie ever made. The recent Man of Steel.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it was great up until I thought they had done enough. I thought the battle between him and General Zod at the end was a mistake, because the battle prior to that, where they're fighting in the smaller town, was better because it showed Superman still evolving, and it showed a lot of his weakness and kind of insecurities, really not really knowing his own strength and discovering it. It was believable, but I think it got to the point where they started fighting. It was almost as Zack Snyder, the director. He just decided to go all out. Like, he couldn't resist doing this huge epic city battle, which was
a good fight scene, though.
Yeah. Well, if you talk about vigilantism, I actually pulled up this article on BuzzFeed. It was talking about this guy who is an expert on natural disasters and effects to cities, that the actual damage would have been about $700 billion.
Oh, you're talking about on Metropolis or on Smallville?
On Metropolis, the final battle between him and General Zod. It was like $700 billion. They said it would have been at least 120,000 people killed and about 1 million people missing if the city was populated.
But if the Kryptonians would have terraformed all of Earth, the cost would have been exponentially greater, because it would have been everything. You'd be going back to ground zero as far as what Earth is.
Well, the cost would have been anything, because they would have destroyed anything, so it would have been no money left to pay it with.
No, that's. I think that's equivocating on cost.
Oh.
I'm not viewing cost strictly in actually what dollars.
Well, they want to destroy.
Everyone would be dead. Everyone would be dead in all everything. But listen to this clip. If you could play this clip,
we'll play this.
It's from the Smallville fight.
Okay, ready?
Unsure of yourself. The fact that you possess a sense of morality and we do not gives us an evolutionary advantage. And if history has proven anything, it is that evolution always wins.
I read somebody online saying Superman is clearly a Christian because right after that scene, right after she says that he punches her, they're saying because he goes around punching Darwinites. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true, but I did some research for the show. That clip is highly controversial on atheist message boards. They hate it.
Oh, wow.
They're saying they threw atheism under the bus and they don't understand evolutionary morality and they're just peddling to the Christians and this is just creationism. It was pretty wild to see the reaction to that, that clip.
Superman is written,
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Christianity.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. So I just want to, this reminded me of something watching this clip. My daughter, Evie, she's 4, she loves that like Batman and Superman both have a butt chin. Like, she thinks that's the funniest thing in the world. Like, we were watching Superman Returns last night, and immediately, first thing she says to me, Daddy, he has a butt chin.
Requirement to be a superhero.
Apparently,
and astronaut.
Anyways, this is the end of hour 1, so we'll be back talking about Superman when we come back. Apologia Radio.
Welcome back to the show with you, Die Hero, where you live long enough to be on Apologia Radio.
Thank you, Rebecca. She's the one that I thought you were reading earlier. She's the one that won lunch with us during the conference. So we got to hang out with her a little bit, get to know her. So thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate it. I wish you all could see the face that Jerry has to make when he does Batman's voice. He can't do it without making the face. It's amazing.
Yeah. Woo.
Okay.
I survived. God, I still have a voice after that.
Yeah, that was long.
I feel like just stuck like sandpaper like down my throat. It's like.
So
now you know why they pay Christian Bale the big bucks.
That's right. So before we get into Superman, I wanted to talk real quick about X-Men.
Yeah.
How do we view the X-Men from a Christian worldview?
X-Men is definitely, in my opinion, based upon an evolutionary worldview.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The way they run with it. And so, mutants really are the next stage of human development. And let's assume somehow it was possible for evolution to be true and that morality to determine what you should and shouldn't do. It seems like Magneto probably is right then upon that scheme if you just isolate the existence of God out as if that was possible. But if you did that, why wouldn't Magneto be right? Like, should we be working with humans who are trying to kill us and capture us? Why should we extol these values? We're clearly stronger than them. Why should we have a brotherhood of mutants where we protect each other? And since we are superior, why should we not establish this as the beachhead in new human evolution instead of letting the dregs weigh us down? Why shouldn't we? Why should we go the Professor X route? It doesn't really seem to work out.
Yeah, it's interesting vocab, especially if you think about the very beginning of the original X-Men. When you look at the origins of Magneto, he's in the concentration camp. His parents are being taken away, and you see him, he's an emotional kid. His mom and dad are being taken away, and so he uses his powers then to take away the gate. And, and that's just who he was in evolutionary worldview. Those are just the things that affected him as a child. So why is that inherently morally wrong and biting that Magneto's officially the bad guy? He's just, he was just raised that way by his environment and his culture. So who's to say that, like I said, that he's right and that Professor X is, he is wrong or Professor X is right or vice versa? Yeah,
and strictly on a survival level, you could say the non-mutant humans are inferior. Their abilities to survive is not as high. And you could also say that it'd be misplaced trust to put your trust in them to do the right thing, because they do often do the wrong thing. And so why should we go Charles's route? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the government's raiding the houses. They're experimenting on mutants. They're doing all this stuff. So that's an interesting discussion. I mean, you just have to appeal to something, but it doesn't really... it doesn't make sense, because even if you look at Magneto, he still has a moral code, but it's for the mutants. There's a brotherhood of mutants. He's not just out to just kill, steal, and destroy strictly for the sake thereof. He has a reason. I mean, that's why he's an interesting villain. Yeah. He has a different type of reason as far as why he would do it. But
yeah. Well, I mean, you look at even... There's still a transcendent good and evil, even with Magneto and his crew, you know, fighting for this evolutionary, you know, might is right type of deal. You still have the X-Men and Professor X, these guys over here. They still have a transcendent good and evil, and they're saying, no, we're not going to let you do that, because... Right. Know, and so it's interesting just to see I just now thought about it. Well, I just brought it up. I didn't even think about it. Just the worldviews clashing, even amongst the mutants.
Right, definitely. I mean, that's the conflict itself. Because Professor X says, no, give them time to work it out. They'll come around. You know, they'll do the right thing. You know, this type of thing. But will the non-mutant humans really always do the right thing in relation to the mutants? Maybe, maybe not. Right. I mean, why should we be at the mercy of lesser beings as far as physical ability and intellectual ability as well? Often, why should we do that? What's the reason for that? Unless there's something else.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember, is it X-Men First Class? It kind of got into a lot more of the disagreements that Professor X or Xavier and Magneto had between the two. And it's kind of interesting, too, because you kind of saw in X-Men First Class there was sort of a bromance between them. So they had aspects of that. But, yeah, it had more just to do with they are arguing over how do they relate to the humans.
Yeah, those are meta issues right there. I mean, that's moral philosophy they were having, those discussions.
Right. And so, but if it's more of just an evolutionary worldview, like if evolution is true, it really didn't matter. Like I said, no one's really right. It's just a matter of who ends up winning. Is it Professor X or is it Magneto? Whoever ends up on top, essentially.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Marcus?
I think that, sounds good.
This is the least talkative you've ever been. See if I ever have you on the show again. Go ahead.
Every time I've ever watched an X-Men movie, I've fallen asleep.
What?
Yeah, I know. Dude, I have. Something about it makes me sleepy.
I'm deeply disappointed.
Perhaps if the X-Men were brought into their rightful home in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, maybe then I might be interested. But as long as they're under Fox's dominion, I just fall asleep.
Dude, even like the Wolverine ones, have you watched those? Like,
the Wolverines?
Yeah. Like, no, those are like the new Wolverine is like just action packed straight through. Like, I don't know how you could fall asleep during that one.
Yeah, the one prior to the X-Men Origins Wolverine, that's terrible.
I loved it.
Oh, it's
the
awful.
First one, I don't know, it was all right. But the second Wolverine movie, that one's interesting because the villain's quest, in essence, seems to be to live forever. Yeah. To live eternally. And so there's discussion. There's some interesting questions about that in relationship to that as well.
Do you guys think that the X-Men just have their glorified bodies early?
No.
Wolverine definitely doesn't.
First of all, because they're not standardized enough. You know, I think there's more standardization in the glorified body.
And I think there's a lot less pain of getting a glorified body than Wolverine had to go through when he got his exoskeleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
there won't be any originality or diversity in our glorified bodies?
No, I just said more standardized. That doesn't equal total uniformity, but more standardized. Because, I mean, for example...
Not random.
For example, Mystique, I mean, she could do all these different shapes and stuff. Or you have, I mean...
Shapeshifter.
Yeah, you have people with wings growing out of their back. You know what I'm saying? Like Archangel, like that's
What about the Sentinels? How are they playing?
I don't know. I don't know enough about them. Those are the dudes, or the robots or whatever, designed to kill mutants. Yeah, I don't know enough I don't know. I know what you're talking about, though.
Okay, so I'm going to switch topics here, and this is directly for you.
Oh, okay.
Vocab. Talk about G.I. Joe. I know they're not really technically superheroes.
Right. Well, G.I. Joe is interesting in that it comes from a different era. So initially, the 60s. Well, actually, I mean... even further back, but specifically my era of G.I. Joe is the 80s related G.I. Joe.
Right.
and on strictly a sort of conservative type of way, not just the Christian aspect, but G.I. Joe definitely is like, relatively speaking, conservative, Republican, 80s Reaganomics leaning as far as its initial inception. Uh-huh. It's very friendly to that. There's actually an interesting article, I think, that was in there's one of the online pretty well-known conservative mags that had an issue about why G.I. Joe appeals to conservatives. But because there's an aspect of patriotism and this and that there. That's more the cartoons, though. To me, what's most interesting about G.I. Joe is the original 155 Marvel run mainly written by a man named Larry Hama. Because within that, he explores larger issues and questions, and it's not just shoot-'em-up type stuff. He definitely gets into some important stuff. For example, they'll do missions that are frivolous or pointless, but they have to follow orders. Okay. It's at the behest of politicians. And they recognize what they're doing is pointless. They realize it's strictly political, but it's not necessarily evil. It's more just like wasteful sometimes. But they do it because they're following orders. So to me, that's interesting because they're recognizing sort of military coups happen because the military is stronger. Yeah. But they're recognizing a sort of submission to the rule of law when they do this type of stuff. But there's other times where there's stuff that would be strictly immoral that you'll see them not doing, even though they are given explicit orders. To me, G.I. Joe has a lot of interesting worldview questions in it, at least especially the original ones. Yeah, also in G.I. Joe vocab, what's the Cobra Commander and the Cobra Kai? Not Cobra Kai. The Cobra Commander in his army. I know, I'm silly early, but come on, Miyagi, let's go. No, are they actually a rogue group like Al Qaeda, or are they actually a nation, or how does that fit into, and what's their moral code and agenda in the G.I. Joe world? I'm gonna go with the original comics because they fleshed that out the most. So Cobra Commander was a sleazy used car salesman. His business didn't work out. He blamed... Are you serious? Yes, he blamed capitalism. You got to carry this over to the next break. Yeah, we're coming to the break. He blamed capitalism and began Cobra. I did not know that. That's amazing. That's awesome. Apologia Radio. We'll see you on the other side. I'm Cobra Commander, exactly what the name implies. Take the prize for charismatic, sociopathic. Words hook you like some opium addicts. You're lonely and tragic. Time to get open to havoc. Running rackets for whatever helps the scope of my ravage. To cope with the madness. Welcome back to Apologia Radio. This is Cobra Commander rapping for us. So I'm going to have Vocab talk some more about this. They're legit costumes. You know what's funny about that? It shows the level of nerd you can go, because you may think it's legit, and I may too. But it's not. But I signed up. I applied to join what's called the G.I. Joe's Finest, the local chapter. And that's the group that cosplays as Joe characters. Cosplay is where you get in the outfit of the character. Yeah. And they rejected us because our costumes weren't up to code. They weren't. They're not good enough. Wow. Really? Why? They have all these specifications you have to meet, and I'm not willing to do it. It's it's too much. So I'm not in the local Joe costuming club because I don't meet the qualifications. So what are some of those qualifications that you're not meeting? I don't actually know exactly, but they have these little things. The boots have to be a certain way, and the uniform has to be a certain color, and certain patches have to be there, and certain materials and fabric, and it gets crazy, man. It is crazy, man. So we're not at that level, bro. But yeah, so that was Venomous Ideology by Wordburglar. It's actually a Cobra hip-hop album called Welcome to Cobra Island. It's pretty awesome, and that was Cobra Commander rapping. So his backstory was he was a sleazy used car salesman. It didn't work out, and so he blamed capitalism and economic free market principles. So he would go around to college campuses, and he would speak against the ills of capitalism and the free market structure and talk about returning power to the people and all this type of thing. And was he getting paid for these talks? Well, I don't think in the beginning, but he was basically saying we need to have a violent revolution. Join me and we'll do it together. But first we have to form up this brotherhood and we'll coil around the world like a cobra. And so it is a very multinational vision that he had. And but it was really, that was just the guise. Really, he just wanted unlimited personal power. He's a villain a little more along those lines. But some of the people that he would join up with would have differing motives. Yeah. But ultimately, it just became a game of villainous thugs in essence. But it was, and it is, a terrorist organization that he runs. It is multinational. The idea is to infiltrate secretly and also to have sort of an above-the-ground type of war, to be able to take out countries, mess with markets, and eventually get your own domains. So they get a consulate building in New York City, so they get diplomatic recognition at a certain point, because they form their own island. They force the U.S. government to accidentally basically create an island through a missile strike. It's a long story. And they claim as property this place called Cobra Island. So they actually have a territory that they run their operations out of.
Wow.
How does he become a snake?
Okay, so that's the cartoon. The cartoon is more kiddish, and they basically invented a whole different backstory, mainly because in 1987, Hasbro came out with this group of characters called Cobra La, which are bio-organic tech creatures who live in the Himalayas, who were prior to human evolution.
Oh my gosh.
And they want to return to a more organic society and do away with technology of the humans. And Cobra Commander was actually the camel's nose into the tent, so to speak. He actually was made to look like a human or a man, but he actually is part of the snake race of people.
Oh, okay.
And so they want to take over, and he gets reverted back to his de-evolved state, basically in the cartoon. But people that's not real. That ain't right. In the comics, Cobra Commander actually has a son who turns good. His son Billy becomes a G.I. Joe agent. And it's a lot more interesting, and that's a one-time thing they did in the movie just to make it extreme and dramatic, but it's kind of crazy.
Scotty Doo, is that his son's name?
No, actually
Scotty
Billy.
Don't.
His name is actually Billy. And he was trained by Storm Shadow when Storm Shadow went good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we talked about this.
That's interesting, given that Cobra Commander went to the universities and kind of had. Well, you said it was made in the 80s, so he had almost like a Soviet philosophy.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Workers of the World Unite.
It sounded kind of
hammer and sickle.
Sounded very Cuban sort of style of Marxism, from what I could gather what he was saying and doing.
So essentially Fidel Cobra.
Yeah, along those lines. And it's interesting,
Well played.
in the comics, they have him tag team up with small dictatorships in the Middle East who share a hatred for America, but may not be necessarily Marxist, but sometimes are actually Islamic leaning, and they'll have them team up. And Cobra often will do things like supply them with weapons, because they have this high tech, to destabilize the regions and get power within local regions. That's a big part of their strategy from that comic run. So what I'm saying is, people, the G.I. Joe that was created mainly by Lara Hama, which is a lot of the backstory, is actually a lot more complex and politically and philosophically sophisticated than people recognize. The thing is, it's not the in thing now, because it's sort of stereotyped as that's boys and Rambo and that's Republicans. You kind of get that stereotype upon it, and there's been other iterations that don't really stick to that type of philosophy, and they get weird, like some of the movies. But
I didn't even see any of the new movies.
Yeah, the second one's okay. It has a G.I. Joe feel. The second one is okay. You should give it a chance.
I'll check it out.
Some of the ninja action in it is just the best.
Okay.
You just can't deny how dope it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
when
the
you
part
watch
where where they're on the ninjas in the mountains, where they're doing that. They're on, what are they?
Red Ninjas, and that is directly from issue 21 of the comics. That's the most famous comic ever came out. And if you look, there's a whole scene where Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes are fighting in the hall, and if you watch it, it's all silent. There's no dialogue. The reason is because issue 21 of the comic was the very first silent comic to ever come out in comics, called The Silent Interlude, and they, as an homage, have that no dialogue, just sounds in that scene.
All I know is when I was a kid, if I got money, I was buying G.I. Joe, guys.
Yes, G.I. Joe is the blue collar toy, because it was very cost. It was under $3 to get one guy.
Yeah.
Whereas Transformers was really expensive because all the die cast and all that. So G.I. Joe has always been a very blue collar sort of every man's type of toy.
Yeah.
With also in G.I. Joe Retaliation, what did you think of The Rock as Roadblock? Was that good? Was that a good caricature or a bad caricature according to the comics?
He's not exactly like the Roadblock, but he's a good update of Roadblock. Personally, Roadblock to me should be, this sounds weird, but actually a darker, more like clearly black man physically, but that's okay. And he's supposed to actually have Southern roots, and The Rock didn't portray that. He had him grow up from Chicago, but Roadblock is supposed to be from Mississippi. But it was a good update. It was a good modern update.
Yeah. What about Bruce Willis when he kind of showed up as Joe, and he's kind of like the older guy? Is that related to the comics at all?
No, he represents the '60s Joes.
Okay.
So Bruce Willis represents the original G.I. Joe, the big, tall, 12-inch guys, more from my dad's generation. That's what he represents. And if you notice, there's a scene where he says, "I'm going to get some old friends," and they help them out on their mission. It's all older guys with beards, the guys in the background, because they are representing the original '60s G.I. Joes.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what Bruce Willis is. He's not from the '80s. He's actually from the '60s G.I. Joe. And that's G.I. Joe was an homage to World War II veterans when patriotism was high in the country. What happened is Vietnam came and G.I. Joe lost its popularity, and it became more of an adventure thing until they realized the time was right, rebooted it in the '80s, and that's what we have now.
All right. Well, we're this is amazing. We'll see you on the other side.
Luke, I am not your father. You are listening to Apologia Radio. Here are your hosts, Luke, Bear Walker.
I'll never turn to the dark side.
J2D2. And J3TO.
Use the com link. Oh my.
Are you wondering why are we here?
I'm looking for someone.
Found someone you would have, I would say, yes, sir.
Well, welcome back to Apologia Radio. We figured since Vocab and Jerry are both wearing Star Wars gear that we would this is a short segment. We would talk about Star Wars from a Christian worldview, and then the last segment we'll do Superman. So
No, stay and help. I will find your friend.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
Oh, Yoda. You seek Yoda.
You know him?
To get to him, I will. But first, let's see. Come, let's see.
That's great.
you could just recite the whole movie, couldn't? Or like
parts,
like the whole series.
Especially not the first three. The dialogue is not very memorable anyway.
Yeah.
I got one line down though where Obi-Wan directly engages in a logical contradiction.
Go for it.
All right, Revenge of the Sith. It's clear that Anakin is turning to the dark side. Obi-Wan hears something Anakin says, and Obi-Wan responds with, only Siths speak in absolutes. That's a logical contradiction. Only Sith speak in absolutes. So that is an absolute statement that only a Sith would speak in an absolute.
Right.
And then he speaks in an absolute.
Right, and he's not a Sith.
And if we're channeling Sai, he'd be like, are you absolutely true? Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that true, sir?
So Obi-Wan, even though he's probably actually my favorite character in the series, they put a lot of bad junk on him. I feel it's more the writer's fault. My opinion is Obi-Wan, deep down in his soul, is actually, they don't always write him correctly. I don't actually think Obi-Wan's that messed up that he would say something like that. That's my opinion. And they've got him saying things in Return of the Jedi where he says, what I told you is true from a certain point of view. Luke says, from a certain point of view. Luke, you'll find that many of the truths we cling to are true only from a certain point of view. Total gets into moral relativism, postmodernism, all that. I don't think that's Obi-Wan's heart and soul. I wish they wouldn't do that to him, but they had to make him lie about Luke's father, and so they end up him talking this nonsense. But he does say stuff like that in the movies, which bothers me.
Well, obviously, so in Star Wars, we still, again, have a transcendent good and evil.
Well, it depends. I mean, you have it if the Force is the reality of that universe. I don't understand how they can speak of the will of the Force because it's not personal. But sometimes it seems like some of the characters will talk about the will or the plan of the Force. This is more in what's called the EU, the expanded universe. But it's not a personal thing because it can be manipulated strictly by the user or the wielder. So if the wielder desires to use this energy for good, they do. If they desire to use it for evil or bad, they do. So the Force itself is morally ambiguous or supposedly neutral. It's contradictory. It's that aspect of it is very, Eastern religion, very Zen Buddhist. But then they kind of dump some Judeo-Christian values on top of it. It makes it contradictory, ultimately. The Star Wars moral universe is totally clouded. But what they do is put that on there to give it the greater, more overtone. It's clear that the Dark Lord of the Sith is bad, and it's clear that the good. But the question is, okay, who set that up? Where is that coming from? Because it's clearly not from the Force itself.
Exactly, I was thinking the same thing. If you talk about what's the newest episode, The Force Awakens. So
right.
And so there's the good side, and then there's the dark side of the Force. Well, by what standard? By what binding standard is there? How do we determine what's the good? What is the dark side, and what is the good side?
Yeah, and Yoda
is there a binding code?
Right.
That's above the Force to actually determine that.
Yeah, so, Yoda says, anger, rage, hate, these types of things are those types of things are from the dark side. And there's just so much contradiction. Like Yoda tells Luke, the Force is only used for knowledge and defense, never for attack. He says that in Empire. However, it seems the Jedi don't only use this Force for knowledge and defense. They do use it for attack, especially in the
Episode 4.
Yeah, and especially 1, 2, and 3 as well. Mm-hmm. You have that. So, and the question is, the Jedi code, is it actually right anyway? Like, this idea of no attachment, but you're attached to this moral order, but you can't be married, but you have to be attached to this moral order, this Jedi order. But is that the right thing to attach yourself to? Meaning, some points, Anakin seems like he's more the right one. Like, would it really be right if you knew your mom was dying to let her die because of this Jedi code? I don't think so, but yet that somehow leads him to the dark side. See, that's that Zen Buddhism stuff coming in. You have to detach yourself from attachment.
Yeah.
It's like the contradiction that lies within the heart of Buddhism. What's the problem? Where do we get suffering and death from? It comes from desire. That's where it comes from. So what do you do to eliminate suffering and death? Eliminate desire. But to do that, you have to want to eliminate desire. You have to desire to eliminate the desire. It's contradictory at its heart.
Wow. That's good stuff.
And that's Star Wars and presuppositionalism for you.
There you go. No neutrality.
Wow. Good.
Apologia Radio. We'll be right back.
Apologia on your iPod, rapping about Superman. No, he's not God, but he's fighting Zod, and plus the Kryptonians. Here we on the radio, Luke, here we go again with that Pittman. We got that grit, man, like G.I. Joe, Superman on the flow. Yo, check it, this dude is so super. Grab the microphone and he will not shoot ya. If you try to shoot him, it bounce off the chest, it bounce off the ass, cause Superman is fresh, yes. 1, 2, he's a heck of a guy. He'll look at you, infrared, laser beam, I can't see through lead, but he's got a head with a butt chin. Superman flying again, he's got the black curl all over the world. He takes the nuclear weapons and hurls.
Awesome, man. I like how you snuck in butt chin.
That's awesome.
Welcome back to Apologia Radio. Marcus, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say that I have been completely out-nerded by vocab, and I feel inadequate as a nerd, and I need to step up your game.
What happened? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, you got it? What happened?
No, dude, you don't.
Wow.
Dude, you get vocab and Pastor V in the same room, and there's just the nerdness just flows out of the room.
Dude, Ramon's comic book knowledge.
I know.
It's no joke. So it is true that because I have a certain skill set with nerd knowledge, he has another skill set. When we form up like Voltron, it gets pretty complete. But because he has all these areas that I don't. So you talk about Marvel Comics, this dude's encyclopedic, and he's able to apply his theology. So I've put in a request at this year's Phoenix Comic-Con, which takes place during Labor Day weekend, to do a panel, which I'm pretty sure is going to get cleared for Thursday, called Thor, Thanos, and Theology, Comics and Worldview. It'll be myself, Ramon, and a guy who has a degree in history, and a local atheist.
That's awesome,
who's
dude.
a big comic book nerd. And so we're going to discuss these issues from our worldview perspective.
That's
on
awesome.
it. And on Unbelievers Radio, the local atheist show, I'm going on there to talk about, they've got it titled as Comic Books and Religion, I think next month.
Oh, sweet, dude.
That'll be interesting.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Okay, so this is the last thing I want to talk about Superman. I'm going to play Superman Returns teaser here, and then we're going to talk about it. Jeremy, are my levels up? Okay.
Even though you've been raised as a human being, you are not one of them. They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason, above all, their capacity for good. I have sent them you, my only son.
Yeah, so let's talk about, I'm going to read some stuff here that I wrote down. Just Superman being a Christ figure. And like Vocab mentioned earlier, you know, his dad's name is El. So you got El the Father, El the Son. He, you know, sends his only son to Earth to save mankind. When he comes, when, you know, his earthly parents, mother's name is Mary, his dad's middle name is Joseph. And then some cool stuff. So like the Christopher Reeves movies, Tom Mankiewicz, which I believe he was a Jewish guy. He said that these movies were giving people the Christian message. And then I guess I never watched Smallville. I don't. Did you ever watch Smallville?
I never watched Smallville, but have you seen that cover of one of the DVDs? So I never watched Smallville, but this was brought out by somebody else.
You did?
Yeah, I think it came out probably about almost like a decade ago.
Yeah, look at this, Jerry. It's one of the covers of the DVDs, and he's strapped with ropes to a crossbeam behind him in a cornfield. And I guess it's from a scene in the episode. And here's what's pretty interesting. Tom Welling talks about the DVD case. I guess it was for the pilot episode. He says, here's an example from the dialogue. Lex, Clark, you can't save the world, and you'll end up with all you'll end up with is a Messiah complex and a lot of enemies. And then Clark says, I saved you, didn't I? That turned out all right. That's an example. There's a lot of that in there. And the Tom Welling, I guess, says basically, yeah, he was always a Christ-like figure, but we definitely heightened it. That was actually Alfred Goh, one of the Smallville guys. So some of these writers consciously do it. Even in Man of Steel, Superman is 33. They specifically they make a note to his age specifically, which is 33.
Yeah, and also I pulled up the clip. I don't know if we'll have time to play it, but there's a scene in Superman Returns where Clark takes Lois up above into the stratosphere, and there's just one point where he says you wrote that people don't need a savior, but every single day I hear people crying out for one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think that's just powerful too. That Bryan Singer put that in there in this movie.
Well, he even said, he's quoted as saying that Superman is the Jesus Christ of superheroes. Singer is.
Oh wow.
Doesn't he claim to be a Christian?
I don't know.
I thought he was. I could be wrong. I thought he was an atheist. I think
maybe
he's
someone else I'm thinking of then.
I think he's come out as gay too.
Yeah. I know that's true. I know that part's true.
Yeah.
Maybe he's PC USA.
Oh, I definitely got the wrong person.
Okay, so here's some other cool things. Just like Messiah comes back, Superman returns as a Messiah figure. I thought it was cool. You look at when Jesus goes to the desert wilderness. Superman goes to the Arctic wilderness. They both are able to raise people from the dead. You remember Superman in the original movie? He
flies around the earth, turns it backwards to turn back time or whatever.
To save Lois.
Yeah. And he himself resurrects. So you guys all remember the death of Superman. Mm-hmm. Well, Doomsday.
Yes.
That's an interesting name for a villain anyway. Doomsday.
The Armageddon creature.
Yeah. So he kills Superman. And, of course, he doesn't stay dead forever. And when Lois goes to find him, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, go ahead. Go for it.
Well, the wording they use in the comic is interesting. I've got it up in front of me. She says, "Oh, Lord, it's empty. His tomb is empty."
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it's very...
So would you say that this is blasphemous, or do you think it's a parallel, an allegory that's meant... Like, how would you say that? Because some people get really mad about it, but I'd say... Well, it's an allegory.
Yeah, I would too.
What do you think?
And I think you even I'll let Vocab answer too, but I think you even have all the writers and producers saying the same thing, like they're doing this as a parallel of the Christ story. Go ahead. I
don't think it's blasphemous because everyone knows Superman is not Jesus, and he's still not perfect, and I think they're more drawing upon this understanding of who Jesus is and how he would function and kind of showing ways that he functions at that. There is some danger, though, to where if let's say kids, for example, they can think, hey, yeah, Jesus can feed 5,000, but Superman can melt steel with his eyes. Like, which one's cooler?
Yeah.
Like, it is true that we want Jesus to be the only true superhero, in a kind of cheesy way of speaking, that is really on our number one, and we have to be able to separate which is what. So we have to understand this is products of the human imagination drawing upon things that are in reality. So I think we should look at it more. It could be helpful as parables or illustrations maybe for things as opposed to other things, because we don't want to get it twisted. There can be a danger there, I do think.
Well, I mean, look at like Lord of the Rings or like Chronicles of Narnia. Those are all similar parallels, but I would never say that they're being blasphemous. Were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, I mean, just in the overall just in like overall filmmaking and movie making and storytelling, most of the time I just take the view that the Christian worldview says that every single person who is a writer, director, producer, they're all image bearers of God, and they have God's law written on their heart. So a movie may not necessarily be, hey, we're going to make a movie that's going to reflect Jesus through Superman. I think a lot of times people, just because people have God's law written on their heart, even sometimes just unintentionally through their storytelling, is that stuff is going to come out. What does it say in Ecclesiastes? That the Lord has set like eternity in the hearts of man. And so a lot of times you'll see that done through art. Now, obviously, there'll be times, I think, Marcus mentioned, where people will do things that are intentionally blasphemous, like a movie like Jesus Christ Superstar. That's obvious.
Right.
They're going that direction intentionally. But most of the time, whether it's through Superman or like the Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy, there's aspects within those that, even though like Christopher Nolan is not a believer, there's certain times that he may display something through his film that may hint at a Christian worldview. Like even an example like the original Matrix movie, there are aspects of Christianity within that, but at the same time, there also was Eastern mysticism in that as well. But overall, like there's, I think, like I said, any director or filmmaker, to some extent or another, is going to have inescapably some Christian worldview come out because they're image bearers of God.
And I think that stuff is better than we're talking about some of the good aspects of what, for example, the comic medium and all that can do mainly. But there's always a message there, and there's a lot of negative things that are pushed too. For example, if you look at the intrusion of homosexual characters, especially into the Marvel universe,
Green Lantern.
North Star, for example, was one of the first gay mutants. There's an article on advocate.com, which is a homosexual magazine, of course, and they talk about 10 gay mutants. And they had a same-sex marriage in 2012 between two of the X-Men characters.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that type of stuff is being pushed too. For example, if you watch the Gotham series on Fox, it's totally, I don't think it's relevant at all to the plot.
Yes.
Yeah, they have this lesbian relationship, which it seems totally irrelevant to anything. Yeah. And it's almost like it's purposely dealt with in a mundane way. Like, hey, this is normal too. You could do this, you could do that. It's odd the way that happens. Even in Flash, the cop, boss, the boss, the like head cop, the chief of police, he's homosexual. He makes offhand comments about his lover, his male friend, and it's just thrown in there casually. So it's not even like the Ellen, coming out of the closet like it was a big thing back in the day on that sitcom. Now it's like but it has to be in all these mediums. Right. It seems that's just one example.
It has to be because they have to show how diverse and friendly they are.
Well, even right now, I think I just saw like in my Facebook feed that supposedly, I guess Star Wars is introducing its first LGBT character. I don't know if it's in like the new movies, but or somewhere within like the new storylines past that.
And that's interesting because think about the way that a large part of this world's population is underrepresented in comics. For example, with the X-Men, so you've got a Catholic-leaning character, Nightcrawler, and a positive portrayal.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of negative stuff. There's this whole comic book series called Preacher. Look it up. I think it's a DC comic that's way not cool, basically. I'll just say that. And Christianity and the Christian worldview is really underrepresented oftentimes within these framework, but yet you have an overrepresentation of, for example, LGBTQ. So what we're saying is, I think that there can be plenty of negative uses for this medium, and that was even known way back all the way in the 50s. Now, maybe they overreacted at points, but it's true there can definitely be a corrosive aspect to like any medium. It's not all
right.
good. It's not all good
Right.
stuff that we're talking about.
Well, Marcus, you should bring back Bible Man and make a Bible Man movie and make it cool.
I think maybe more salty the Bible.
You could have Jeff. Jeff has experience as Bible Man at a church before.
I think we need just more Christian artists and comic book makers and video game creators. And
there you go.
We need inventors of art mediums
There you
too,
go.
like that are Christians. Just
Kingstone Comics in Florida is not perfect, but it's a pretty good comic Christian organization, and they're doing this series called The Christ, and it's all the Gospels told, and they portray Jesus historically, but sort of at this maximum level, like the scenes walking in the water. I think they're pretty cool. Look up Kingstone and give an opinion.
All right. Thanks, guys. J-Man, what do you think?
Man, I love this show. This comic book stuff, right up my alley.
Right on. J-Man, we love you. You're the best.
I love you guys, too.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next time. Apologia Radio. You can get us at apologiaradio.com. Peace out.